And but there was never a problem of these people living together because they were all governed by the Soviet government, and they could always practice their own language and traditions and all that. So there was no really big animosity among them. But then after the collapse of the Soviet Union, because nationalism was so suppressed, all the states started to reemerge and bring this being between these separatist groups who wanted to separate from Georgia and the Georgian government. But it was not as tense until 2004 when the new president came into power. I don't know how many of you have heard of Mikhail Saakashvili. He's youth educated. He's a very active, sometimes not a very good diplomat, just very out there and a bit crazy, and wants to go for NATO and EU, and he wants to have Russia as a neighbor. He doesn't want to have to do anything with Russia. And he's been trying to kind of abolish the Soviet legacies of divide and rule, and so this kind of foreign policy really increased tensions in the long run. And then I guess one historical fact that has to be mentioned is that in 1991 there was actually a war between Georgia and South Ossetia. But Russia was a very big part of that war, and they actually helped South Ossetia to win this war. And then what's interesting is that after the war, the peacekeeping mission was set up on the border between South Ossetia and Georgia, over there. And the peacekeepers consisted of Russians mostly, some Georgians and some South Ossetians. And this has been very, very controversial because, first of all three of them were parties to the conflict. So when you're talking about this buffer, it's just there was always some fighting going on among these peacekeepers, and it was just very, very tense situation. But then I was talking about this being president that came into power, and because his policies were so pro-Western and anti-Russian, Russia actually decided to prevent Georgia from joining the NATO at all costs. So actually in 2004, something very interesting happened. The Russian government issued passports to these people living in this part of Georgia, and they said, oh sure, you don't want to be part of Georgia, here's a Russian passport, and you can be a Russian citizen living in Georgia. And this was, of course, the Georgian government considered this illegitimate, but not much done about it. I guess some hate speech had place there also. And so, as a response to these little rebellions going on in this district, in August, Georgia just decided to go in with massive military, and that's what I heard. That's what I heard from my parents and everybody who was there, that it was a very massive military operation to go into South Ossetia and just take over, finally, once and for all. Unfortunately, I guess the speculation was that Russia would not interfere because it coincided with the Olympics and everybody was busy and things like that. I think the ideal plan was that Georgia would go in, and then before Russia could actually react, it would seize the territory and then claim that this is our territory and that there shouldn't be this rebellion going on here. But it didn't quite work out this way, and Russia reacted immediately with even a bigger military operation with hundreds of tanks and all that other hardware and military personnel. So it actually grew into a full-blown war between Russia and Georgia. So South Ossetia was just in the middle there, and actually I think after 2 days, her Georgians just started to pull back because it was just so disproportionate, and a lot of people were dying, the military was done, so there was no point. But then what was the most horrible part in this war was that the way Russia responded was that it extended way beyond South Ossetia. And so you probably heard of Gori, this town that is a very, very central part of Georgia. And so the highway between west and east. So lots of other villages that are not in South Ossetia were bombed. And it was very sad, lots of people dying. And right now, Russian troops still remain in about villages. And, according to the agreements, they're supposed to withdraw and go back to the positions they held before this conflict broke out. So that's what they are now.
Outside of South Ossetia still?
Yes, they're still
outside of South Ossetia.
It's interesting how the only bits and pieces of information came out. And during the summer, the big story, not the fact that people were dying,
right,
but that these two little girls that went to visit and were on vacation
right,
couldn't get out.
right.
That the bad people in this place were not allowing these little girls out because the borders were closed.
Right.
And that was very sad. But the majority of the information coming out, even from CNN, was the story of these two little girls. Nothing of what you said, no history of what you mentioned came out. So it's interesting to me how the propaganda really manipulates the reality and keeps us with our head in the sand.
Right.
How convenient.
Yes, it is. Media plays a
Thousands of
huge
people were
role.
dying.
And yet, those two little girls from Long Island, and the fact that the father was going to hop on a plane over from Kennedy Airport to go and how he was kept away, when the truth was thousands of people were dying.
Right.
No one knew this.
Yes, definitely. But I guess in that situation, the foreign diplomats who worked there, they offered to, transport them to a neighboring country, just in case. There was nothing happening in Tbilisi, in the capital city. But day by day, my parents were expecting that they're going to be as next. So it was very, very difficult to see what was happening, and you could expect it. So I'm not surprised at the little panic that they went to take the girls out, or that they closed the borders.